Between my high school and my first year in college, I worked at a stately old hotel called the Summit Inn. Many of the people who stayed there called it the Overlook of the Midwest, in an homage to the hotel featured in Stephen King's novel, The Shining. In many ways, they weren't far off. While it didn't have an overwhelming evil spirit like in King's novel, there was a dark presence that permeated the entire place, and I got to experience it firsthand. The hotel was located in the foothills of the Allegheny Mountains and had been built in 1907. Over the years, the place had lots of changes, both good and bad. More than once it had almost gone out of business, but somehow it held on and had become a place where many people stayed throughout the summer months. At first I really enjoyed it. The hotel had this regal, old-world charm that both myself and the guests seemed to enjoy, sort of like going on a trip back in time. The season for the hotel was April through November, but I can tell you the place only had a few guests in late November. That was when the strange stuff happened, or so said one of the old staff members who had worked there for years. It wasn't one thing, but more of an accumulation of occurrences. One time, I went to clean up a guest room and found a sink coated with blood. I knew I was in over my head when I saw it, so I grabbed one of the other workers and brought them back to the room, but by then the sink was empty. I felt a little woozy after that, but Gretchen, one of the longtime staff members, told me to buck up. She said she'd seen much worse, and after the time I spent there, I guess she had, because I saw enough in my summer there to last a lifetime. On another occasion, I was going down one of the hallways when I heard a low wailing sound, as if a baby was crying. It got louder and echoed down the hallway and went up in volume with each second. Within a short time, it was so loud I had to cover my ears. But then it vanished without even an echo. When I looked down the hallway, everything was normal and no guests had left the room to see what was up. There was a part of me that wondered if I was the only one to hear the ghostly wail. The final place I experienced something strange was in the basement. Even Gretchen, who had worked there for years, was reluctant to go down there. Specifically one room. She said it gave her the heebie-jeebies, whatever that meant. One time when I knew she didn't want to go down there, she sent me to the basement to get something. It was on the side of the basement where it was just a little darker. As I approached a specific storage room door, I heard a noise coming from behind that door. It sounded like a low moan, but then it changed to a scream. That's when I backed away from the door and just went back upstairs. As soon as the season was over, I had seen enough to know that I wanted to go to college and to avoid a job that put me in any place like that creepy old hotel. Several generations of my extended family grew up in the same small town. That meant we all attended the same high school. It was an old building that didn't even have air conditioning, but it had tons of character and lots of stories. But those stories were about to end as the high school was about to be torn down because a whole new school complex had been built on the edge of town. Over the years, rumors spread that the school had been haunted. Of course, none of us ever saw anything to support these stories because we were only there during the day. We just knew that we had to get to the bottom of these stories because the school's days were numbered, as parts of the school had already been shut down. So on the last night the school would be open, me, my brother, and my two cousins decided we had to check out these rumors of ghosts. We knew there was a door that could be propped open for us to get in later, so we did that when we left the school that day. The clock hands seemed to move slowly that night as the sun went down. When it was finally dark, we made our way to the school and discovered that the door was still propped open, so we went inside. It was strange to be inside our school at night when there was no one around. We sort of felt like we were spies on a mission under the cover of night, but of course that also made us nervous. All the time we were there was a low-level creepy feeling hanging over us. One of the first places we went was a locker room because it was closest to the door we had entered. As soon as we entered the room, we heard these noises from the locker doors, clanking a little, like someone was about to open them, but then it went deadly quiet. I don't know what creeped me out more, the sound of them clanking away or the silence. But we convinced ourselves it had to be the wind or some air pressure thing, so we decided to just keep going. So we moved about the first floor, feeling like night burglars. Once we circled around the whole entire floor, checking out classrooms and sneaking around, we decided we had to go to the second floor. But I sensed a hesitation in our group. This was because the second floor was supposed to be haunted by a student who had committed suicide on graduation day many years ago. The rumor was that the student had cheated on his final exams, and they didn't give him his diploma. In a deep depression, he jumped out the second floor window and killed himself. It had been a long time ago, and we never checked out the story, but it had been told so many times in our town, it had become lore. Once we got to the second floor, the creepiness factor went up by a factor of 10. This floor had been mostly abandoned by then, as some of the school operations had already been moved to the new school. We entered the room at the far end of the building when we heard a mournful moaning. It seemed to fill the room, and I felt goosebumps go up and down my body. I looked toward one of the windows and saw a dark figure standing by them, looking out. Its moan became a shriek, and one of the windows flew upward. That's when the form went out the window. And we all said later we heard the sickening thud of a body smacking on the unforgiving pavement outside. Well, that was it for us. We ran out of there so fast, I'm not sure our feet hit the ground. The school was torn down a month later, but the people in the area still report hearing a sad moaning sound at night, coming from the place where the school had been. Several years ago, I worked for a fundraising department at a small liberal arts college. Our offices were located in an older house in a somewhat secluded area on the edge of campus. The house was surrounded by woods and was at the end of a long road. One time we were on a deadline, so I decided to work late one night just to get things done. I asked my coworkers to lock the doors after they left because the house was a little bit spooky and I would be there working alone. You know, there's these little noises that go on in houses, little creaks as the house settles or the noise of the heating system. After working away for about an hour, I thought I heard a noise in one of the back rooms. But when I actively listened, the noise went away. I kept on working, but later I thought I heard a male voice. It was like murmuring, but when I listened harder, it sounded like humming. It was just a light sing-songy hum. I decided to check it out, but when I walked around the floor, I didn't find anything. To lower my paranoia, I decided to turn on some music to drown out any other noises. Later that night, I got this sensation that I wasn't in the room alone. It literally sent a chill up my spine, but when I turned around, there was no one in there with me. I chalked my experience up to the paranoia of working alone in a house at night. Being all by yourself in an empty place can really work on your mind. Later, I could swear I heard one of my coworkers' voices coming from within the house.
Let's get this stuff together. Meet that deadline as soon as possible.
It was very clear and distinct. I also heard footsteps and other movements. I was convinced that my coworker had returned to the office. I decided to go see what was up, but when I got to my friend's office, no one was there. Feeling even more nervous, I slowly checked the entire first floor of the house, but it was empty. Then I looked into the parking lot, and my car was the only one there. There was just no chance that anybody was there with me. But who could have been walking and moving around? I realized I was alone. Then I thought, am I going crazy? Or is there something else going on? Much to my relief, the janitor came in and did the night cleaning, picking up trash and running the vacuum. I really wanted to leave, but since I was no longer alone, I decided I'd just get the job done. They left after about an hour, and that's when I had this experience of an intense chill come over my body, as if someone had placed frozen hands on my back. I jumped out of my chair and spun around, but no one was there. I thought I heard hushed whispering, and then it slowly decreased in volume. Then it was gone, and my body warmed back up. I decided then that it was time to leave, and I came in very early next morning to finish the job. but I decided I was going to investigate what had happened. As it turned out, several others reported having similar experiences to mine. When I dug into the history of the house, I discovered that the old past president of the college had lived in it, but he died of a heart attack while shoveling snow on the front wall. The only thing that we could collectively come up with was that his spirit haunted the place. I decided from then on out that I wouldn't work late any longer in the house, or I would take work home.